Adriano, and welcome to our show, Real Estate, Wealth, and Overall Health. This is Season 2, Episode 7. And just before we get into this fantastic show, I just want to say, if you like what you're hearing, you like what you're seeing, hit subscribe below, like this page, follow us on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify at a.m.realty group, Real Estate, Wealth, and Overall Health. You can hear all our past episodes. We have great guests on there, so definitely check it out. Without further ado, back to Season 2, Episode 7. And today, like all our shows, we first start talking about what we've seen. So, the July has just passed. We got a lot of the numbers in. What have you seen in July? How do you find it? Because it was kind of a market where there were the most sales in the last 4 years, and it's kind of interesting because the market's kind of weird right now. So how are you finding it?
It is an interesting time. Between the two of us, we're sitting on with leases about 7 or 8 listings right now, with another 2 that will be coming on board, which is a high number. Usually we don't sit on that many at a time, especially if you have offer dates. They tend to sell within a shorter period of time. So we have noticed that, yes, July sales have been up. However, it's definitely more kind of on the side of a buyer's market. So we're seeing in most areas across the GTA, for the most part, we're sitting at probably 3 to 4 months worth of inventory, and the days on market for the properties have been increasing. So for example, if you had, let's say, a pocket of Alderwood where, let's say back in May, the average days on market was sitting around 26, 28 days, so approximately a month, which is still a reasonable short period of time. Now they're sitting in the 40s. So 45 days on market, 46 days on market. So, and even more than that, we're actually seeing that there was a poll done, and they said that they took all the detached properties across the GTA, and the average days on market that are plus 60 days was actually 70% of inventory. So that tells us that if we see, properties that are sitting on the market longer, and that doesn't even include properties that were taken down and then listed with another company or terminated and taken off, and then they tried an offer date and situations like that. So there definitely is still buyers out there. We're finding that they're still a little bit hesitant, though. I think it's with everything that's still going on, with some uncertainty with the new tariffs that are coming or that have come into effect. I was actually golfing with my godson. I took him out. He's actually an incredible golfer, by the way. He's only like 13 and he just blows me away. I'm very impressed by him. And we were talking to the manager at the course, and he was actually saying, I said, oh, it's quite busy. And he actually said, no, our numbers are down. People are not buying as many memberships. I said, really? He said, yeah, people are really watching. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And he said, well, I've been here over 15 years, and I think it's because of Trump and all the, the extra costs now on imported goods that are necessities, right? Everything he's got going on with China and India and all the expenses, like everything is the cost of consumer goods has gone up because a lot of companies now have extra fees that they have to pay. I was actually crossing the border and I bought a bottle of wine because I was hosting some friends over and neighbors, and the border, they asked, and I said, yes, just one bottle of wine. And then she said, well, are you aware of the new laws? And I said, well, I knew I'd have to pay something. And she said, well, this is what's going to happen. How much did you pay for that bottle of wine? I said, well, it was about 20 American. So, it was about 20 bucks. She goes, well, it's actually going to cost you 60. And I said, oh, 60? She said, well, yeah, there's a 20% tariff fee that you have to pay. And then on top of that, you're also going to have to pay the duty and the tax. So I said, oh, wow, it doesn't seem like I'm saving very much money here. And she said, no, it doesn't make sense, does it? And then she was nice enough to say, look, I'll give you a warning this one time because, I could tell you really maybe didn't know it was going to be triple. I said, no, I really didn't think it was going to be triple, or I don't think I would have bought the wine. And then she explained it. And now it's like, wow, I really see the effect, because for someone that, let's say, has to do something like that, it's a lot more than they probably anticipated on spending. So that's one of the things too. I guess there's a lot of hesitancy. We've been talking about this for the last few months, and I think part of it too is July and August are traditional summer months. The past few years,
we've had, really strong markets, low inventory. So there was always people looking to buy because there wasn't inventory. Now I feel like people are going away on vacation. Buyers know that they can take their time, and things are just sitting. And, it's not anything to be alarmed about. You just have to be smart about it. Like going back to July sales, and what we had a meeting with a few people, that are well versed in this kind of stuff.
Industry.
And they said that, in the industry. And what they were saying was basically that the people who were buying, and part of a lot of those sales were people looking for deals or discounts. And part of that's because they might have sold and they didn't get what they wanted for their property. So because they got less, when they were buying their next property, they tried to negotiate a lower price because they felt they didn't get what they wanted, right? Or there are people out there that are just looking for deals. So that's the type of buyers I find that we were seeing in July. That's the type of things that were getting sold. So if you are wondering, if you're on the market and you're wondering like, why am I not selling? If you're basically over what the what the average price is in your market or what other competition is, you're probably not going to sell it in this market unless you have something like extraordinary that
really unique.
Really unique. You have to be priced very, very strong, very competitive. Make sure your realtor, if it's not us, is looking in the area for how much competition you have, months of inventory, how many units are selling. These are all things that are very important in this type of market. And that'll bring us to what we think is going to happen in the fall. Coming up. But basically, the long and the short of it is July was positive because a lot of things were selling. But at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily mean that prices were increasing. We were just getting inventory off the market.
Exactly. Sales numbers were up, but not the actual prices increased.
Yeah. So with that being said, now, going into the fall markets, we're going to be hitting, September, October, November tend to be the second best time of the year after spring, most of the time. So what are your predictions, let's say, for fall 2025?
So I hope that we see that more buyers are coming off of the fence and, starting to, search again and starting to buy more actively so. However, I'm changing what I thought a month ago only because I think that because we've held rates and there hasn't been any reductions with the Bank of Canada, unfortunately, I think this is going to carry on a little bit longer. Again, there's always reasons why people are buying and selling. So I'm not saying there's not going to be activity. There will be. But I think this goes back to what Adriano just mentioned, where you really have to be priced right. Like, for example, I just went on a showing last night where I had 2 back-to-back showings because the property value is probably around $840,000, $850,000, which is still excellent value. It's a bungalow in the East End, no one in the backyard, unfinished basement. However, it used to be a 2-bedroom basement with a kitchen, separate entrance. The house is dated, but it shows well. Again, it's a nice lot, 40 by 121. So having said that, she priced it at $799 just to get some stimulation. And let me tell you, when I was there was a showing leaving. I was waiting. There was already cars there. I went in for my showing. Then the next client showed up, and it was busy. And there's already an agent. They've only been listed for 3 days, and the agent that has showed it before me apparently is going to be bringing an offer. And I know that for a fact. It's like he probably will be. So that's not going to last. So again, this goes back to if you have a product that is unique and it's priced right at market value, or just slightly under to get a little bit of that activity and get buyers interested, I think that you'll still do okay.
Yeah, I agree. If buyers want a deal right now and they know they can get it. I agree that I feel like, as much as I read an article today saying that the Bank of Canada is torn between whether they should lower rates or keep them steady, because there's a lot of indication saying that people are okay. I mean, like I said last time, people are out spending money. They're on vacations. You go to restaurants, people are eating.
True.
It's full. And so some people at the Bank of Canada are saying, well, people are affording it. It might be tight, but they're affording it. They have to make sacrifices. And others are saying, well, we need to lower rates because it's too much. People can't go. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they lower it, because some people are saying they might lower it 1 to 2 times by December. Other people
Hopefully.
are saying it might stay. At the end of the day, I've been telling a lot of my clients and myself and Merilyn, like, if it goes down another 0.25%, I don't think that's going to change anything drastically, except for maybe confidence a little bit. If you're looking to move, and the numbers work for you, just make sure, you don't become house poor. There's never a good or a bad time to do that, I feel. You can't time it.
The other thing we're hearing is we deal with a lot of lenders, and we're hearing that there's huge demand right now for refinancing. So a lot of people are refinancing, whether it's just, a small amount, well, not small amount, but some, for some people it might be like 150, 200,000 that they're doing short term, maybe for a year or so, just until they can, refinance with an A lender, let's say in the future. So we are hearing a lot of that. Apparently, the lenders are very busy, the brokers and mortgage specialists with refinancing. And actually, myself and Adriano, we can share, we might be in that situation with one of our investment properties too. If we're in that boat, and we usually can't say this to our clients. However, we received a lowball offer, but it just wouldn't make sense at that offer. We would have lost money. So we said we were going to hold out. And our plan is, if it doesn't sell by September, October, we may be reaching out to a lender to see if we could do a bit of a refinance as well. So having said that, I think that it's a good time though for a lot of first-time buyers as well. Like if you can get into the market, we are working with some that, they're in a rental right now and they figure, well, if I'm spending $3,000 a month, over the course of 25 years, that's, hundreds and thousands of dollars. That could be something that I could pay down and own something, leave something for my kids. And a lot of people are thinking that way as well.
So I agree with all of that. And listen, and she said it, we are in the same boat for certain things. And the advice that we take and give ourselves, we give to our clients. So, just know that we follow the advice we give, right? There's no special treatment because it's our own property.
Yes. And sorry, I wanted to add something. There's no cooking in that house. There's no smoking in that house. There's no pets in that house. And we all have pets and love pets. The house is staged. And I think we're priced. I mean, we're getting offers, we're not there yet. So like we tell all our clients, we just have to, make sure that patience is a virtue, and we have to practice that at this time. And hopefully the right buyer will be there. And if not, then we will also do an adjustment and slightly adjust so that we're closer to the target.
We got to take our own advice. We got to listen to our own podcast. But so quickly, maybe in a minute or two or less, strategies for sellers to be successful. So if you're going to put your property on the market this fall, what do you need to do to sell and be successful as of today, from what you're seeing? Okay,
so I think we just hit a couple points. Yeah. So I think pricing is very important. Making sure that the home really shows well. That's another thing as well. And I went for a showing on Sunday, and I found it interesting that the seller was in the home sitting at the island writing notes and kind of eating during the showing. So I would also say that maybe, having your clients, the sellers, just go for a walk or go do errands, like letting the buyers come through and have their personal space so that they can feel comfortable and not feel, uptight that, oh, someone's watching me. So I think those are kind of very important. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to price. I think if you price something well, then it's going to attract attention, just like I mentioned with the property listed at $799 in the East End, the bungalow, right? Yeah. So I think that's number one.
Yeah, I would agree. The thing is look in your area before you list. If there's a bunch of properties that look similar to yours, you got to be very, very competitive, if not below what they're asking. If you're the only property, because you're in maybe an area that doesn't have a lot of turnover inventory, you might be able to price it a little more aggressively. So keep that in mind. That would be, again, to do with price, and that's usually the biggest thing that comes into play if you're not selling right away. So on that note, strategies for buyers in maybe a minute or two or less to be successful in this fall. A lot of buyers go through stuff and then they don't end up buying. They get frustrated. To be successful, to buy something, what does a buyer have to do? So
I'd say number one thing, which is very important, is have a pre-approval. Know that, what we're working with. If our budget is up to, again, I'm using $799, $800 is our budget, then we should be looking at properties no more than about, $849, maybe within and around that kind of number. Because the last thing you want to do is put together, even for myself, I fall in love with a house and then, I tie it up and then they just say to me, sorry, Merilyn, it's not going to happen. We have to break the deal. We tied up the property, making those types of phone calls. So I would say stick within your budget, know what you can afford, because the last thing we ever want to do is put our clients even to situations where they're overstretching themselves. You don't want to be house poor. You still want to live, like Adriano was saying earlier, it's summertime, people want to travel, go on vacation, you have events, you have always parties and stuff that also costs money. So I would say, put together a budget and know what you can afford and what makes your, lifestyle comfortable. And then I think work from that number and kind of work backwards, right? And that means also you might have to open up your location, right? So sometimes with our clients, if their budget is X and then we're not really getting anything, then we may have to say, well, is it possible we can drive an extra 10 minutes? And then sometimes maybe it's driving north from, now all of a sudden from Vaughan to, well, maybe not a 10-minute, but you're driving maybe 20 minutes towards closer to Bradford, where the prices are less than they would be, let's say, in, Kleinburg. Yeah. So something like that, I think it's important to kind of know what we're working with and budget and affordability so that there's options, like very good options available, and that you're not led to feel disappointed or frustrated. We heard that too, or, we're not finding anything, or we can't really afford anything. So I think that's really important. And yourself?
Yeah, for me, I feel like being realistic, because in this market right now, there are a lot of realtors out there that they think if a house, let's say, is listed at 1.2, and let's say it's very competitive for what's selling, they still feel, or they'll give their clients or buyers advice that they can get it for 1 million or 1.1, and that's not going to fly. What ends up happening is you get a frustrated seller, you get a frustrated buyer because the agents are just not knowledgeable about where they have to be. So then you can throw in an offer to try, but at the end of the day, the buyers get frustrated because, like, we tried and you said that we might be able to get it, it didn't come through, and there becomes a lot of frustration. So be realistic with your price. Now, there are times where you can get it 100, maybe even 150,000 under value if it's sitting for a long time, if you look at comparables and it's way off. But most of the time, if they're priced realistically, where something else is sold recently, you might be able to move it even a little bit more. But like, to get a significant amount off, it becomes very, very difficult, even on the, for the seller. So I'd say be realistic and work with an agent that can bring both parties together. Both agents need to be, aware of that in this type of market to bring the deal together. I think that would be, like, for me, the biggest thing, because all that other stuff you can work with and you can advise, but it's just, knowing what to expect and for what house. Because I remember the first time too, I started going out with people when I was younger and they weren't pre-approved, and I showed them houses. They're like, yeah, we could afford up to 600,000. This was like 20 years ago, and I showed them all these houses. Then they went to get pre-approved and they could only afford 450, and I started showing them stuff at 450 and nothing. They didn't like anything, and then they just get frustrated. So that's right. I think being realistic for me is something you have to do in the fall.
For sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about investment properties, and I wanted to ask you, you own a few investment properties yourself. What are the top or the most important things that you look for? Let's say the top three when you're looking for a good investment. In your opinion, what makes something a good buy?
Yeah. Well, for an investment property, so there's all different types, but there's three things you should look for when you're looking at an investment property to have, like, the grade A plus investment property. So the first thing is cash flow. So if you're in the hole monthly, or even depending on tax situations, like, that's not maybe the best thing you want to be in. Okay. You want to at least be making some money if you choose to. Now, if you pull equity and because you want to be breaking even, that's different. But like, when you first purchase it, now that can be because you get a really good deal on the property, or you've put down a big chunk of down payment, so you can make that work. Okay. But number one is cash flow positive. The second is you got to make sure the properties are increasing. Right now, the market is kind of balanced. A few years back, people were making 10% on their properties, and their properties are 700,000-800,000. That's like 80,000 a year. You get a really good increase there. And then the third is that you're paying down a balance. So you have a mortgage there where a portion of it's getting paid by your renters. It's not just maybe an interest-only payment. If you can find those three things on a rental property, I feel like you found, like, the trifecta, the A+ property that, even in good or bad times, you can work with those numbers, and you're always, either increasing the value of the property or you're paying down balance and you're able to pull equity. So those are the three for me. How about yourself? I know you have rental properties too, and you deal with a lot of them.
Yes.
What do you look for a good investment?
So for me, I look for location. I want to be able to look long term. So usually if I buy something, my plan is not to sell it, within 6 to 12 months. I like to just kind of buy it and sit on it and hold it. So I'm looking for capital appreciation, location. I want to be in an area that will be appealing for tenants as well. So it has to be close to usually a subway line or in a good school district. So those are kind of things that I look for. And another thing is depending what type of a product. So we're going to get into that as well, actually, in our next segment. I think the other thing is number of doors, right? So I have some investment properties that are condos, and then we do have some that are houses as well that are just, multiple doors and multiple tenants. So I think it depends on what your comfort level is, your comfort threshold as well, because being a landlord comes with, we could talk about that in another episode. There definitely is a lot of pros and cons, and at times it can be more work than other times, depending on, we've had a lot of good tenants, but then if there are some situations where they get a little bit more, let's say, messy, then it could be a lot more effort. And, unfortunately, not always all of our, situations are always, they can get a little bit, there could be problematic situations, of course, as well, which is also something that can happen, and we have to be, aware of that as well. So I think for me, like I said, I just try to get into a good location that I think is high demand, and also looking for long-term appreciation. And also, I think the other thing is, like Adriano mentioned, just something that's cash flow positive, because if I have an investment and I'm losing $700 a month, there are tax benefits and stuff, which we won't get into that, but it's also, you want to be able to make something every month as well, right?
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, like going to what we've been seeing in the last year or two. A lot of people, this goes back to especially condo assignments, right? People bought them 4 years ago. They qualified at like a 2 or 2.5% rate, and they paid a future value for the condo prices.
Right.
Even if they can close on them now because the rates are a little bit higher and the prices aren't appraising at that, but even if they can get a private lender or a loan, or they put down more money, their payments aren't like, there are people that are paying $800 to $1,000 out of pocket just to keep their rental afloat.
Yeah.
And that is not like, you're going to bleed lots of money. I mean, that's, that could be up to $12,000 a year plus your maintenance, please. Like to me,
only go up.
Yeah. And to me, that's a tough investment. That's where we talk to clients. We're like, okay, you might sell and lose 40, 50 grand. But when you look at all the costs associated, even if you have to carry it, even if it's being rented, that's not even being vacant, that's being rented, and you're losing all that money.
I know.
It's kind of like, you got to then see where your best investments go. So it's very, it's very important to look at that. And some people didn't have control over that because they bought they didn't know that rates and all this stuff was going to change. But that's where we're seeing the biggest, and that's why the condo market is suffering right now.
That's right.
A lot of it's because of that.
And we actually have one right now where that's what's happening, is the tenant gave notice they're leaving. So now if they have to carry two places, so now say you have your already another mortgage of $3,000 a month, and now you have to carry that other secondary rental property of $2,500 a month. That's a lot of money for someone to, have to now cover that extra $2,500 a month, right? So for their payments in terms of bills and,
And this is where we were talking earlier, where, in the Bank of Canada lowering rates, in a situation like that, you want rates lower because people have to carry and you want them to have the least amount. But if people don't have these issues or problems and they can make, they have one property and they're making their payments and they've owned it for a while, then they can spend money like for them, so it's a kind of it's a tough little balance they have going there, plus the tariff. So anyways, without going too much off track, that's kind of what's going on with the market. And those are the 3 and 4 things that we think are best for investment properties. So let's talk about the different types of investment in properties and maybe what or why some might be better than others. I mean, I know what I think, but we have condos. Yeah. You can have townhouses, semis, detached. Then you get into multiplexes, and then we're not going to talk about huge, bigger buildings, but those are basically the 4 or 5 that you can get. And what do you think? Or what's your idea or opinion on those as a rental property? So
I'm going to tell you, when I first got in the business many, many years ago, we're going back 20 years ago, I had the same question from my broker because I wanted to buy something, and I owned at the time, I think, a condo and maybe one other property. And I said, I want to add to my portfolio. I'm looking at this townhouse or this detached in Sonoma Heights. And then he said, Merilyn, whatever you do, 100% buy the detached. And I was like, I don't know if I can afford that. Okay, the townhouse is just more attractive because of the price. And he was like, I'm telling you, hands down, go for that detached. So a couple of months later, I was actually driving along Islington and I saw this sign, and I actually ended up doing a deal directly with the agent. I ended up holding that property for about a year and a bit. I did some renovations. I think I put maybe 30,000-40,000 in. And then I actually found something else. Driving again along Islington, I saw another sign that was in a better location. I said, oh, geez, well, I wonder if I would be able to get into this bigger property. Let me see what I could get now that I renovated my property. Having said that, I ended up listing the property to see if I could get what I wanted, and I actually got what I wanted with my own buyer that came through my sign. Anyhow, so it ended up working out, and I ended up making, I think, about 160,000 after my renos, my costs. So I was able to get into something bigger. So I always think back and I think, well, if I would have bought the townhouse, I'm sure there would have been some appreciation, but I certainly don't think it would have been, north of 150,000. Maybe that appreciation would have been maybe 50, 60,000. So I always think that detached is a better investment. I mean, if you can get something that has a separate entrance so that you can rent out the basement, there are a lot of people that do that as well, especially depending on the location. Even if you got $1,500, $2,000 a month, that's almost like could cover most of your mortgage payment, again, depending on the price and the balance. But having said that, you could almost live for free. So depending on the situation, but I think that detached is always better if that's an option affordability wise.
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah. So for me, basically, anything is a good investment just to get in, right? But the way I look at it is how much limitation do you have, like on a rental side? Like if you're looking to your primary residence, this is different because you just want to live. But on the rental side, it's like, what's the limitation and why is there more value? So as to Merilyn, when you have a detached property, it's like you have no one around you. You can kind of do as much as you want. If you have to build up, build back, there's, besides variances and stuff, there's the least amount of limitations. When you get into a semi, you have someone beside you. There's different limitations on what you can do. When you get into a townhouse, especially some of the newer ones, you don't even have like separate entrances. Like that's what I like about semis and detached.
Yeah.
Because I find like the best rental properties are ones right now, the ones that at least are cash flow positive in today's market with the prices and everything, are ones where you can split like multi-level. So if you have an upstairs and a basement, those ones I feel even in a tough market, even when rates went up, those were covering.
That, and another thing as well, Toronto is all about, basically creating more housing. So if you have a detached house, there are actually on my street two people and it happened pretty quick. It was like one day I was driving and then suddenly I noticed there were these two laneway houses in the back. And I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. And one of them was divided into two because they had two doors, two mailboxes. So they actually made two units in the back on my street. And now he's got two more incomes, right? Yeah. So it's kind of when you, like Adriano said, when you have that detached property, there's just more options. We're not saying 100% you could build in a garden house or laneway suite, but having said that, there's definitely greater of a possibility than if you had a semi. It's probably unlikely.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can, but what I'm saying, I learned from someone else. I was at a seminar once, and he was saying like, if something changes in the market, like with a condo, right? A condo, all you can do basically is like if it's dated, you can like update the condo, but you can't add any more square footage. You can't you can't do anything. You can't rent it out, to more people, I guess, unless you like get a million people in there like on an Airbnb or something, but like legally, right?
Yeah.
But when you get into towns, that gives you a little more options. And then semis, you can start splitting if they have side entrances, even on towns if they have that. And then detached, it gives you, the most, because in a depressed market, if you're losing money, if the value of the house has gone down, maybe you can add an addition on, or like you said, do a laneway house, or maybe convert your basement into a unit just to bring in more money, or add more value. So
you can Airbnb your basement.
Yeah. So when you're looking for investment properties, take that into account. Now, if you only have enough money for a condo, and if you do the numbers and you're breaking even, that's a good start because you're still building equity, right? But if you're losing a lot of money or whatever, then maybe money can be put into different things in a better way. Or if you're nervous about maybe spending a little more money to get into something bigger, if you do it properly, the rental that you should get out of it should cover the same as if you're buying a smaller property. That's just, at least in my opinion, what I've seen. So, and then, so moving on to the next thing about rental or income properties, we're in a market that's maybe a balanced or even a buyer's market, right? So why are markets like this good time for investors? A lot of people are like, oh my God, why am I going to invest? The market's going down. But why is this a good time for do you think, for investors, or what do you think?
I think there are people out there that are picking up deals. Like, I've seen it, and we've had our clients even tell us where, properties all of a sudden were listed at X, actually just listed traditionally not for an offer date, and then it ends up selling for 100,000 more because it was priced under value. So, even if it was priced under value, the value is, let's say, 1.5, but it was listed at 1.4, they're selling relatively quickly. So I think, having said that, it's still a good opportunity, like I said earlier, for first-time buyers to get into the market because the prices have come down. And also, I think that it's also a good time for people that, they, let's say, have been looking for a long time and they just haven't really found that right property. Well, maybe that property that you were looking at even a year ago that was, $1 million, now all of a sudden you can maybe get that for, let's say, lower nines, right? So I think it is a good opportunity to still get in the market. I mean, we even have some good inventory. Like, where can you get a detached house, fully done up, $350 spent into the house with a separate entrance, a mud room, fully fenced backyard, parking, separate unit in the basement that you could rent out, mutual drive for, 900,000 in Toronto. It's almost unheard of. So I'm seeing right now there are some good options out there. It's like you mentioned earlier, it's August, it's hot outside. There's a lot of people traveling. A lot of our clients are even saying, they're going away with their kids. Or we just had a friend of ours mention they're leaving Asabo Beach for a week, or they're going to rent a cottage for a week. They're going to Niagara on the Lake for a couple of days. So I think people are just still busy living life and enjoying,
Their mindset isn't there.
Exactly.
And in terms of like investment properties now, so I know a lot of investors, and when the market was going crazy, like, a lot of them would sit back. The people that were buying were maybe first-time investors or people who got caught up in it or felt, FOMO a little bit. But the smart people, when they make money, the smart investors, they sit. And it's times like these where now they have other properties where there's equity built up and they can pull off of that.
That's right.
And then they get the properties in a depressed market where, even if it's a plex or if there's 2 units, maybe the guys aren't paying rent or the guy's mortgage goes up more and now he can't afford it.
Hopefully not.
No, but you go in there and you buy it a little distressed, or you buy it in a more balanced or lower market. And then 5 to 10 years from now, long-term hold, these people are like, oh my God, you got it for this amount. It's because people have the wisdom or the knowledge or even the courage to go out there and purchase something when everything's going the opposite way. And that's how people make money.
There are a lot of people out there with money that are buying right now, and that's where they actually grow their wealth and portfolio is during times like this.
Times like these, they don't buy when you're at the top. Like, a lot of them don't.
It's funny because actually some of our top clients, they actually refuse to be in a bidding war. They're like, no, I don't like that. I'm not going to play that game. This is my offer, one shot, take it or leave it. And they don't like to do the whole
they do their numbers. And if it makes sense for them on numbers. And
for them, it's, what it is? I think it's more not emotional for them. It's more, they look at it like a
transactional. It's a business transaction.
Yes.
Now listen, if you're if you're looking for a primary residence, you fall in love with your dream house and it's in the exact neighborhood you want, it's done up, it's in the school district you need, you might have to be in a multiple offer, and you might pay a little more just because you'll be there longer term. But in the investment side, you really have to be diligent with your numbers. Don't get emotional, and you can pick up deals right now. So that's my thoughts. Now, listen, we could go on forever about rental properties and income, because both myself and Merilyn deal with a lot of clients, and we also have our own property. So if you are interested in that, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a conversation or to help you through numbers and processes like that. But definitely, it is a good time if you have cash. Before we go on to the final thing, I just want to say I'm working with clients now. They wanted to pay off their house, so it took them a few years to pay it off. Now they have equity and they want to buy a rental property now. So that's kind of, if you're in a position similar to that, where maybe you're close to paying off your property, or if you want to move into something but use your property as a rental and you can pull equity, these are all times where this kind of stuff can work if you've owned for a long time. So something to think about there as well. So with that, now we get to get into the fun conversation, the fun part of just about what we've been doing on the personal note to keep healthy and to keep relaxed. Lots going on though, so it's hard to do that. But how about yourself? What was July, and what did you end up doing to kind of keep balanced and relaxed?
Yeah, so July's just been really busy. There's been a lot of events, and there's been, my partner's actually doing 2 marathons and a triathlon, so there's been a lot of training for that. And of course, both myself and Adriano, we both really like fitness, so I'm just doing regular my Pilates classes and yoga, and lots of like going for walks as it's nice outside. And I recently got a dog, and she loves being in the outdoors, and she's just such a outdoor, happy-go-lucky little character. So yeah, just been taking the weekends. If I'm not working, some weekends I do, of course, whether it's an open house or showings. But if I'm not, I try to block off a day or two and just, go up north, go to a cottage, spend time with friends, just being by the campfire, having a drink, and then, just like talking and relaxing. I find that is a really nice way for me to unplug and to just kind of, unwind and relax and recharge. Because I think in this industry, it's something that we don't really talk about, but you can get kind of burnt out because it's not 9 to 5. There's always like on demand, right?
Yeah.
And even last night I had those showings. I had to drive all the way from the East End. By the time I got home, it was almost like, whoa, it's 9 o'clock. I still haven't had dinner. So our job is not, it's not the 9 to 5. So sometimes the hours can get, kind of long and demanding. And
stay grounded.
Exactly. So I think trying to find the balance, but yeah, just been doing the barbecues and no real big trips this year. But I mean, I know Adriano's had some.
I've been lucky enough at the beginning of July to take a break, and I went away to Italy, and that was fantastic. Good food. I was able to swim in the Mediterranean. I love the ocean, so if it's beautiful water, nice weather, I definitely get to relax there. So I was able to do that. And coming back, we like you said, we still have stuff, even though the market is kind of more traditional. There's so many people on Instagram that I've seen like that are in Europe and stuff like that. So that as soon as I see that too, because you didn't see that a few years ago, you can tell that everyone's just kind of doing that, and I can see why the market is performing the way it is. But it's just try to stretch, work out. Enjoy this beautiful weather. We had a really good stretch of nice days here, so they don't last very long, so we have to take advantage of it. But we're feeling good, and we're looking forward to a very successful fall market, and it's probably going to be a very busy one. So take the time now while we have it.
So that concludes this episode of Real Estate, Wealth, and Overall Health.
Until next time, take care of your real estate,
your wealth,
and your overall health.